Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. You know, I have always kind of wondered what would happen if you took a bunch of nerds, weirdos, and anime fans and actually stuck them on the front lines of a war. While in 2025 that might describe any branch of the armed forces, I luckily don't have to join up to find out, because Martian Successor Nadesco has existed for almost 30 years and answers that exact question. Once again, we cover a Studio Zebec production. They sure do keep popping up and making a bunch of great stuff. Nadesco is a sci-fi mecha slice-of-life parody anime that was originally released in late 1996 and riffs on everything from Mobile Suit Gundam and Space Battleship Yamato to Getter Robo. Nadesco was planned to be a multi-platform property from the start, with the anime launching alongside a Nadesco manga that was written by Kia Asamiya and ran in the popular magazine Shonen Ace. Did you like the jump cut there? I forgot his name. Asamiya actually has a pretty diverse lineup of work that I admittedly haven't seen very much of, but his most prolific things are probably the adaptation of Silent Mobius, and I think he actually did the manga version of The Phantom Menace, which is pretty cool. Asamiya has actually done a bunch of variant covers for Western comics, and a lot of them are really unique. Nadesco would go on to garner generally positive reviews. In fact, most of the negative reviews you find out there complain a lot about the dub, but still laud the character writing. The series would go on to be generally popular and spawn video games, and OVA and movies, and eventually even a cancelled second season. This was my first time ever watching through Martian Successor Nadesco, so you'll be getting a first reaction review with no real nostalgia for the series, beyond a general love for that 90s art style, of course. Oh yeah, also I watched the sub and I've never even heard the dub, so let me know in the comments if it's something that is worth checking out. Martian Successor Nadesco takes place in the year 2196. Humanity has come under attack by a species of hostile aliens known as the Jovian lizards. Jovians use a plethora of unmanned machines and advanced technology to put Earth on the back foot early in the war. Earth's colonies on Mars are quickly devastated as the aliens blitz the Red Planet, and we see our MC, Akito Tenkawa, very nearly get killed before his pendant glows and the scene cuts away to 1 year later. The war has progressed poorly for Earth, and the Jovians have taken control of Mars and eventually the Moon. They even begin making incursions on Earth, and the dominant military power, the United Earth Forces, begin scrambling for any sort of weapon to turn the tide. They turn to Nurgle Heavy Industries, a corporate conglomerate that uses its knowledge of the aliens' technology to build the battleship Nadesco. Along with its complement of battle-ready mechs called Estevalis, the Nadesco is humanity's most deadly weapon against the Jovian menace, and will be made into a spearhead and symbol of humanity's strength. Too bad that it's crewed by a bunch of weirdos, otakus, and various other social outcasts that spend more time committing hijinks than fighting alien enemies. Well, I say too bad, but honestly, it's Nadesco's charm as a warm-hearted parody that makes the show stand out from the crowd. For every scene of well-animated mecha action, there's one of the crew arguing about bad cooking, or watching old anime, or committing to a full-on Macross parody and throwing a Miss Nadesco contest to decide the new captain. For me, the thing that keeps parody enjoyable and not annoying is a real reverence for the source material, and Nadesco has that in spades. Nothing here feels mean-spirited, and the attention to detail in some of the jokes and deep cuts on the references show that the writers were coming from a place of love, and it's because they understood the genre so well that Nadesco's humor holds up to this day. For instance, Akito is obsessed with an old anime named Gekiganger, and the show itself actually reflects his journey aboard the Nadesco. Whenever we actually get to see the Gekiganger anime on screen, so much attention to detail was paid to make it animate with fewer frames and have a totally unique art style separate from Nadesco. I mean, I just can't help but love it. even if I haven't personally seen all of Getter Robo. The anime within an anime isn't just a gag either. The Gekiganger 3 anime and all of its characters are reflections of the characters aboard the Nadesco and their journey, and they're an integral part of the world building too, actually. The Gekiganger anime goes on to actually inform entire characters' belief systems. While that sounds a little heavy for a sci-fi comedy show, well, Nadesco can honestly be a little heavy and somber in some parts. I mean, yeah, it's a satire, but the character writing is well done, and it does have a fun sci-fi mystery that kept me guessing throughout most of the show. As for the mech action that Martian Successor Nadesico serves up, it's well done but never really blew me away. You really only see short bursts of action through most of the show, with about half of that action being slapstick. When there is serious battle, it's pretty exciting, and for a mid-90s show, Nadesco does look impressive. I think one of the most impressive things about it is how many mecha designs that are introduced, and when they're shown in action, they don't lose much detail. Gotta love those thick, sharp lines and heavily detailed weapons. The mechs in this show are called Estivalis, and there are a pretty good variety of them, from the basic model to space units and heavy ground platforms. It's obvious that the designs were created by experienced mecha artists. Sometimes it's really hard to remember that this show is a weird harem deconstruction where the characters argue about random shit half the time when you look at the Estivalis in the Nadesco's hangar. One of the first things we learn about Akito is that he has such bad PTSD from the aliens attacking that he has a full-on panic attack at work and loses his job. Been there, man. And if that wasn't bad enough, he almost gets run over while riding his bike. Been there, man. Akito recognizes one of the passengers as a girl named Yurika, who is his childhood friend? I guess they have a very complicated relationship. Been there, man. But anyway, he chases after the car because he thinks he can catch up to it and ask her about his parents' death. Of course, Yurika and June are the respective captain and XO of the new battleship Nadesco, and Akito is actually given a job out of pity there in the galley after he explains that he knows them, and he's arrested outside the gate of the military base. When the only Estivalis pilot on board, Guy, injures himself and is unable to defend the Nadesco from an attack, Akito has to get in the cockpit and save the day. Why he even has the subdermal implants for piloting the mechs and other heavy machinery remains a mystery for now. Episode 1 is a great intro to the show that sets the tone of the comedy and the pace of the action. It also introduces the Nadesco's insanely large cast of characters that only grows as the show goes on. Akito struggles through the first half of the series with knowing what he really wants, and seems to flit between his love of being a cook and piloting an Estivalis on an episode-by-episode basis. Meanwhile, Guy is a Gekiganger freak that is so obsessed with a century-old giant robot show that he changed his name and bases his entire personality on it. While that sounds annoying, Guy is actually incredibly endearing and quickly became one of my favorite members of the crew, and his relationship with Akito stays important for the entire show. Yurika is the captain of the Nadesco, but instead of being a stern woman of duty, she's a ditzy klutz who often lets her complete infatuation with Akito get in the way of being a good captain. Yurika is absolutely head over heels for Akito too, and he barely notices her existence for like 15 episodes. The guy has all the keys to the harem, but no interest in driving. In fact, Akito seems incredibly annoyed by it most of the time, which is fair considering how Yurika will interrupt communications during battle to confess flowery inner feelings of love. Then you have June the XO, who follows Yurika around like a lost puppy and desperately seeks her attention. June is mostly used for quick gags at his expense and doesn't get all that much screen time in the first half of the series. The bridge crew is comprised of Megumi, the communications officer, who competes with Yurika for Akito's affections. Megumi actually wins out on that front, at least at first, as they seem to have a budding romance that eventually fizzles out due to Akito's inability to decide what he wants. Before joining the Nadesco, Megumi was a voice actress, and seeing Akito's passion for Gekiganger is one of the things that initially draws him to her, his unashamed love for certain aspects of life. Minato Haruka assists the bridge and fills in a more girly girl aesthetic among the crew. I mean, at times she kinda looks like a Bratz doll. Minato doesn't get a whole lot of focus outside of a small arc about halfway through the show, but she does seem to fire snide remarks at Yurika when she deems it appropriate, which is pretty often. Also, later on, she dates Mr. Goat, who is one of the Nurgle Industries characters that is also on board the ship. Finally, rounding out the bridge crew is Ruri, the child genius science officer of the ship and narrator of the series. Ruri likes to call everyone else aboard the ship a bunch of fools, but in a kind of endearing way, and has a special relationship with the ship's computer, Omoikane. Besides the bridge crew, there are a few employees of Nurgle aboard to keep an eye on everything. Goat Hori is the big man of few words who falls for Minato and is on board the ship to make sure the needs of the company are met. I don't think his title is ever actually said out loud. There's also a mysterious man named Prospector who is kind of like the accountant that's aboard the ship. His backstory is about as thin as Goat's, although he does get a lot more characterization later on and you find out a lot more about him. Prospector isn't even his real name. Finally, there is Admiral Jin Fukube, the wizened ex-military man that is aboard to mentor Yurika while she captains the ship. Fukube actually has a really interesting backstory, being the admiral that fought against the Jovians during the first Battle of Mars. Fukube routed the enemy, but at such a great cost that I don't know if I'd really call it a victory, especially since the Earth forces have to abandon Mars anyway. Akito eventually blames Fukube for the destruction of the Mars Utopia colony, and we learn Fukube also blames himself for those lives lost, and hopes to redeem himself aboard the Nadesco. While I said before that the Nadesco would become the spearhead of humanity's fight against the Jovians, it actually takes a bit for them to cooperate with the EUAF. In fact, the series starts with the military being so pissed that a private corporation has such a powerful ship that they just refuse to let it leave the Earth and even send ships to take it over. We spend the first few episodes with the ship breaking through the Earth's defensive line in order to dock at a lunar colony. While Nurgle claims that the Nadesco's mission is a humanitarian one with the goal of rescuing abandoned civilians on Mars, they have their own self-interest at heart. What Nurgle really wants is to rescue a science team they left on Mars, and in order to do that, they need to pick up some more pilots from the colony. Besides contending with both the Earth forces and Jovians battling it out on the way there, we learn that Yurika's father is an admiral, and she's taken up a leadership role outside of the military to get out of his shadow. Akito and Guy bond over their shared love of the Gekiganger 3 anime, and Guy even shows him the rare third season that was way less popular. They also get along spectacularly in battle, with their shared enthusiasm manifesting into literal Chrono Trigger double text taken right from their favorite anime. Akito was in a really bad place at the beginning of the series, but his friendship with Guy helps him acclimate to being on the Nadesco crew. Guy's enthusiasm is infectious, and he quickly became my favorite character just because he was so fun to watch. Which is why the universe was mean to me specifically and kills Guy off in episode 3, when some Earth Forces officers that were trapped on board the Nadesco escape to the lunar colony, shooting and killing Guy in the process. Guy's death puts Akito into a deep depression, and it doesn't really help that he keeps rewatching the Gekiganger episode where one of the characters dies over and over again. Akito gets really moody and doesn't understand why everyone else appears to have gotten over Guy's death so quickly when they're all really grieving in their own way. While Guy leaves a hole that is hard to fill, Nadesco at least attempts to fill it with the arrival of 3 new Estevalis pilots. Subaru, Hikaru, and Izumi join the crew and offer to add not only their combat experience, but plenty of gags and hijinks as well. Izumi is the least fleshed out of the 3. She does get kind of a backstory in like 1 episode later, but she's mostly used to speak in these kind of strange like Japanese puns that sometimes don't translate very well. You know, it's the kind of thing that a fan subber would need to put a paragraph of text on the screen for 2.5 seconds to explain. Hikaru is the bespectacled, bubbly one that has an interest in anime and other otaku culture and seems to laugh at everyone. And finally, there's Ryoku Subaru, my personal favorite because she's the tough guy tomboy and her voice acting just really stands out to me. She's one of the more effective mech pilots and worries that the only thing she's good at is combat, so she hides that inner insecurity with a tough outer shell. She also has a really cute crush on Akito, and the other 2 pilots pointed out at every opportunity. With the Estevalis loaded up and the pilots on board, the Nadesco heads towards Mars, which just happens to be a pretty long and boring trip. One thing that Nadesco loves to do is give us slice of life segments showing different sets of characters hanging out on the ship. In this case, they use the excuse of doing a bunch of religious ceremonies for the fallen members of the Nadesco and Earth forces. The Polish ceremony involves a vampire for some reason. When the ship finally reaches Mars, they're met with a huge Jovian fleet, causing the Estevalis pilots to punch a hole in their defenses, in this case literally, so that the Nadesco can make it to the surface. All the other pilots are amazed at Akito's ability to pilot the Estevalis when he puts his mind to it, and honestly I was too. Now that they're on Mars, Akito gets permission from Admiral Fukuba to go and check out the Mars Utopia colony ruins, with Megumi tagging along. At this point, Megumi and Akito's fling is in full swing, though she is way more serious about it than he is. And this is very distracting for Yurika, but she can't really brood on it too much because the Nadesco heads straight for the Nurgle lab to pick up a new character, Inez Forsange. Inez is a top scientist for Nurgle, and as long as the ship can get to her and successfully extract her, the mission will be considered a success by the company. Inez is a pretty fun character in the first half because they mostly just use her to like explain all of the sci-fi science babble, and they really don't try and hide the fact that they're using that trope either. She'll literally pop up in the corner of a screen and like give a full PowerPoint presentation on how some of the weird science works. While on Mars, the Nadesco scouts out a wrecked ship called the Crocus that disappeared from Earth 2 months ago, but it appears to have been buried in ice for much longer than that. This leads us to one of the main mysteries of Martian Successor Nadesco. The teleportation that the Jovian forces use via the Tulip Warp Gate isn't just teleportation. It's a concept referred to as boson jumping, and while it allows something to move through space, it also somehow alters time in a way that Nurgle scientists are still trying to figure out. And because boson jumping is thought to be impossible to do with organic material, all of the crew of the Crocus are dead, so there's no one to ask what the hell happened. The Mars arc comes to an end as Admiral Fukuba forces Inez and Akito to return to the Nadesco and then threatens to fire on the ship with the Crocus's guns if they don't escape through the Tulip's portal. Yurika makes the decision to enter the Tulip instead of staying to fight the Admiral, and the Crocus explodes while blocking the Jovian assault as the Nadesco escapes. Akito is pissed off and realizes that Fukuba sacrificed himself to make up for all the lives lost during the first Battle of Mars, but Akito wishes that he had stayed alive to take accountability. Mysteriously, even though organic material isn't supposed to be able to boson jump, the Nadesco and her crew safely make it through the Tulip and emerge near the moon. However, it's 8 months later, which kinda sucks because the trip took only 2 months normally, so boson jumping doesn't necessarily save you time like true teleportation would. In the missing 8 months, some big moves have happened back on Earth. For one, Nurgle and the Earth government no longer have an adversarial relationship and have collaborated to build a second Nadesco-class ship, the Cosmos. Because Nurgle is now working with the EUAF, they get the news that the crew of the Nadesco are to be officially drafted into the military, and they get a new pilot from the Cosmos named Nagare Akatsuki, a long-haired, self-styled ladies' man that seems to be the anti-guy. Akatsuki is critical of Akito's abilities in Estevalis, and even the beloved Gekiganger anime isn't spared, as he makes fun of that as well. At this point, the relationship drama between Megumi, Akito, and Yurika really comes to a head when they get into a situation where they're all trapped in a mech with limited air, and Akito has to decide who they leave behind. He decides on Yurika really quick, man. I mean, they were going to come back later to rescue Megumi, but wow. Megumi sticks with Akito in the following episodes as well. This chick is head over heels for him, while he has maybe a passing interest in her. He doesn't even want to entertain her weird school fantasy that she drags him onto the holodeck to play out. Besides Akatsuki, the Nadesco now has a new admiral on board as a sort of watchful eye for the Earth government. Admiral Munetake is a sniveling worm-tongue style character that no one really takes seriously, especially when he's like yelling and ordering everyone around. Akito in particular has a huge bone to pick with Munetake because he was part of the group that escaped the Nadesco on the moon and killed Guy. Akito suspects that the newly promoted Munetake is not telling the full truth, as Guy's death has been marked as self-defense in the official report. Like I said, Guy is an incredibly important character to Akito and his journey, and Akito ultimately decides to stay on the Nadesco to honor Guy and his memory. At this point, the show has the Nadesco take part in various military operations around the globe, and while the story does have an overarching narrative that it's building towards, it does feel like the middle of the show meanders along at a fairly slow pace. While it takes on an episodic nature, none of it ever really feels like filler, because most episodes take the opportunity to expand on a certain character's backstory. We get one episode where Akito and Akatsuki appear to finally learn to work together, as they have to use limited resources to take out a special Jovian called the Walking Stick. The episode ends with them having a newfound, minute respect for each other, and we get to see Estevalis fight a bunch of tanks that have been taken over by Jovians, so that's fun. There's an episode where the EUAF decides to erase the Nadesco's computer memory because the ship keeps firing on friendly units. Ruri doesn't want the memories erased due to her friendship with the Moikane, and Akito ends up going into the ship's virtual world to pilot a Gekiganger robot to sort things out. Christmas finally comes to the Nadesco, and I do have to say, I actually really do like the Nadesco's Christmas song. The date for the crew's draft into the EUAF is coming up, and we see how protective Goat is as he warns Minato in advance to leave the ship. She doesn't like how overbearing he is and basically breaks up with him, which will actually be important later. Akito learns that he's not being drafted and given a commission as a pilot because he's too reckless and disregards authority. He's replaced with a blue-haired woman as pilot whose name we don't even get to know before she dies super hard. Yeah, just because it's Christmas doesn't mean the Jovians are going to take it easy. However, this attack is different. Instead of the insectoid drones that we normally see, the city is attacked by giant Gekiganger-style robots. They are highly threatening machines that can fire lasers, and they appear to have the ability to teleport, making them a hard target for the humans Estevalis. Megumi decides to leave the ship with Akito because the poor girl is of course head over heels for him, and Akito runs back to the ship, leaving her sobbing at a restaurant table. This episode gives us flashbacks to Akito's past, specifically the little girl from episode 1 holding an orange, and his pendant, which mysteriously disappeared when he arrived on Earth. Akito takes a CC crystal from Arena and throws it at one of the giant robots, causing them both to glow and jump through a nearby tulip gate. Everyone believes Akito is dead, but it's revealed that he actually teleported to the moon, and he showed up 2 weeks ago. This is a huge deal because organic boson jumping experiments have never really produced any usable results and have almost always resulted in the test subject's death. Not only can Akito apparently survive a boson jump, they also have additional evidence. One of the defeated robots is brought aboard the Nadesco and is found to have a full cockpit with a tape inside and a bunch of Gekiganger memorabilia. The mysterious Jovian pilot escapes into the ship and is later found in Megumi's room, but he seems kind of harmless. For one, well, the guy isn't a lizard, and the revelation that the Jovians are actually humans is something that will change the entire tone of the series moving forward. Secondly, well, he's sorta just a doofus. He loves Gekiganger and calls it the Jovian Bible and can barely handle being in the same room as a girl. Commander Shiratori Tsukumo of the Jovian Superior Male Forces is not the threatening alien that the show has presented them to be. However, when more crew members find out about him, they decide they have to turn the prisoner over. Except Akatsuki, who decides to take it upon himself to execute the prisoner so that the secret that they're truly fighting humans can't get out to affect the war effort. Luckily, Megumi and Minato show up to help Shiratori escape, taking him out of the ship with a shuttle. Meanwhile, Akito helps Nurgle fight off another Gekiganger-style robot on the moon that is piloted by a Jovian named Junichiro, who reads manga at Akito. While Akito and Yurika take a shuttle to try to catch up to the fleeing prisoner, they unfortunately don't make it in time, and Shiratori, Minato, and Megumi escape to the Jovian fleet. On board the Nadesco, we learn the truth of the Jovian War through the character of Erina, who says that both Nurgle and the Earth government already knew that the Jovians were human. 100 years ago, there was a war on the moon and the losing side were banished to Mars. The Earth government had instigated the Civil War in order to exert more authority and chase the defeated faction down on Mars as well. With nowhere else to go, they fled all the way to Jupiter, where they found a mysterious autonomous factory that supplies the Jovians with their drone-like weapons. Also, no one remembers any of this because it was erased from the history books by the Earth government, and they also say the Earth government brainwashed everyone. Akito seems he is determined to fight the Jovians even after learning they're human, and is even more fired up than ever. They end up getting Megumi and Minato back when Shiratori and Junichiro attack the Nadesco, and Akito is able to lure Shiratori into a duel long enough for backup to arrive. Megumi ends up crying and saying that Akito is not acting like his usual self, and he just says he's acting like the person he's trying to become, someone who fights to protect the ship. Akito's anger towards Admiral Munetake comes to a head soon after this battle, as the Nadesco has to dock at a mobile battle station to have its new add-on, the Y unit, calibrated. Munetake is sort of at the end of his rope at this point, and all the shit that the Nadesco constantly pulls and damage that it accidentally causes are finally catching up to him. He might get demoted and orders Seiya to complete work on a secret Estivalis called the X-Valis, even though it has severe power management issues. Munetake tells Akito that Guy was shot in self-defense, and that he needs to get over it. But we see through a flashback that Munetake himself shot Guy, and had no real reason to do so. As this episode goes on, Munetake gets more frantic in his demands to finish the X-Valis, until he cracks under the pressure and we see him inject some substance and steal the suit. He hallucinates being attacked by Gekiganger and being helped out by Guy, and when Munetake charges up the portable gravity cannon on the X-Valis, it explodes and takes the Admiral with it. Well, that was a thing that happened. What goes around comes around, I guess. We then get a Ruri spotlight episode as we learn that she was actually a lab-born baby whose embryo was lost in a terrorist attack. A Nurgle-affiliated lab recovered the embryos and raised them, also messing with their genetics so that they would be super intelligent and resistant to disease. Ruri meets her biological parents, the king and queen of an independent nation called Peaceland that made its money off of casinos and untraceable bank accounts, but she doesn't really get what she's seeking out of the meeting and they aren't seen again. Ruri has memories of two mysterious parental figures that she longs to know more about, and only learns the truth about them when she returns to the ruined lab located in Scandinavia. The truth of it is those parents were just a recording made by the lab to be the perfect parents, and Ruri ends up returning to the Nadesco and her chosen family, the one place that she's really happy. Yeah, man, the backstory is pretty fucked up. No wonder they made her the main character of the Nadesco movie to make it up to her. One of the more filler-ish episodes in the last half of the show that I really like is episode 20, which shows the Nadesco acting as a rear guard during a battle over the Indian Ocean. The Jovians have figured out how to boson jump warheads directly onto the Nadesco, thereby negating their shields completely. Everyone has to brainstorm on how to take out the Jovian ship, leading to Yurika coming up with a plan involving luring it into a minefield and having the Estevalis sneak around without any power so they can't be picked up on radar. Yurika is supposed to be very good at tactics, having gone to school for it, and while the show does love to play up her ditzy nature, she does get the ship out of a pinch when she puts her mind to it, and this episode is really good at illustrating that. Martian Successor Nadesco begins to feel like its story threads are coming to a head right after this, as we head into the final set of episodes. As the ship participates in a campaign to lead the Jovian fleet into a trap, the Y unit is damaged and the crew has to head through the dangerous corridors to sort it out in time. This episode skips around constantly from 20 minutes ago to 40 minutes ago to 8 minutes ago, and so on. And while at first it feels like a really jumbled and kind of messy way to do the episode, the jumping around of different times ends up being incredibly thematically accurate. Any of the crew members who enter the Y unit start acting incredibly strange, as we see their more subtle personality traits bubble up and take over their bodies. At the same time, all of them are subconsciously joined together and can see each other's thoughts at this weird hallucinatory poker table. This episode gets pretty esoteric for Nadesco. It really reminds me of something from Star Trek. If Star Trek had, like, pratfalls and a lot more yelling. We finally get to see what has been bothering Akito pretty much all season long, as the pilot's doubts are made physical, and Akito is faced with the ghost of Guy. Akito says he fears becoming a hero because Guy was a hero to him, and Guy died. Akito says that he fears that the Earth will lose the war if he doesn't fight, to which Guy's ghost tells Akito to stop acting so high and mighty. Akito takes the first step into realizing here that this war isn't going to play out like a story in an anime. Like, he straight up says, "I realize there are no reasons for this fighting." Oh yeah, this episode actually gave us some information on Izumi, as we see that she has two dead fiancés that manifest themselves to her. I mean, they never bring this up again, and Izumi goes back to making bad puns and weird jokes, but they tried, I guess. Shiratori's love for Minato leads him to push for peace talks between the humans and Jovians, and as it turns out, the Jovians' resources in the Jupiter sphere are running out, so they don't dismiss the idea outright. Shiratori sends his little sister Yukina off on a peace mission. However, there are a few bumps in his plan. Junichiro and a higher-ranked Jovian named Vice Admiral Kusakabe don't want the war to end and plan on sabotaging the peace talks behind Shiratori's back because they think he has been brainwashed by an Earth woman. On top of that, Yukina doesn't really want peace either. Instead, she literally wants to find Minato and kill her for seducing her brother. Of course, Yukina loses her homicidal urge once she is picked up by the Nadesco and actually talks to Minato. She sees that Minato actually cares for Shiratori and is a good person, and begins to understand that Earth and Jupiter aren't so different. Yurika, seeing this, decides to convince Nurgle to conduct peace negotiations with the Jovians, but this results in the Nadesco being surrounded by a fleet and taken over by none other than Yurika's father, Admiral Misamaru. Here is where we get one of the big character twists of the show, and it's one that admittedly took me by surprise. Yurika decides to flee from the fleet when Akatsuki pulls the ship's master key from the console, something that he shouldn't have the authorization to do. He reveals that he is actually the chairman of Nurgle and has been calling the shots the whole time, and everyone on the bridge reveals that, well, they knew that already. Honestly, I didn't catch it, and that's totally on me. If you go back and watch the clip where they show the Nurgle chairman, it's definitely Akatsuki, even if he's in the shadows a little bit. This definitely also kind of shows the Nurgle characters in a new light. Like, Prospector and Goat should pretty much know that Akatsuki is the Nurgle chairman and is spying on the crew, and they never mention it. Erina absolutely knows, she's like his secretary and everything, but obviously she's frigid, so she's not going to mention it to anybody. Akito and Yurika are taken to talk to Akatsuki, and we get the reveal that Akito and Akatsuki's fathers worked together on the CC Crystal project. Akito's parents were against going public with the discoveries for fear of what the tech would be used for, and were assassinated by Nurgle during the coup on Mars that happened after the military left. Prospector broadcasts the admission to the entire ship via a tiny Ruri-shaped pin, and then Goat proves he's the Goat and disarms a guard, allowing them all to escape. Most of our major characters escape the ship and live lives on the run under constant surveillance by Nurgle. However, thanks to Ruri and Omoikane, plus the help of Prospector and Goat Hori, by the end of the next episode, they're able to steal the Nadesco and head towards Jovian space to conduct peace talks themselves. Man, how the hell did Goat keep his job after shooting guys? On the way, they intercept a small ship carrying Siratori, who had left to conduct the peace talks himself. To learn more about the values that the Jovians live by, the Nadesco crew decide to throw a Gekiganger convention, complete with a marathon of the entire show. It's nice to see Akito and Yurika actually working together after all this time. Their relationship has gone from cold and distant to warm and nearly romantic. Akito still won't take that final step and admit that he actually has feelings for Yurika, but he does admit to her that he's never actually seen the final episode of Gekiganger. Akito is afraid that watching the final episode would make the show end inside of himself. Those ideals that he holds dear and the memories of his friend that go along with them would fade away. Akito has been afraid of change since the very beginning, but now, seeing him refer to himself as both cook and pilot, well, it definitely feels earned. I like how straightforward this show is with the main relationship here as well. Yurika straight up asks Akito to make a decision on their relationship, and even though they get interrupted, it's nice to see characters behave this way. While the Nadesco successfully makes it to the peace talks, Yurika and the others have no idea that in the meantime, the Jovians have finally uncovered an ancient city on Mars that can resupply their technology and lengthen the war. The peace talks are pretty much a total sham, with the Jovians demanding that Earth give up autonomy and become a colony. Siratori is blindsided by this and demands that they rescind the papers on the grounds that the Earth and Jovians both value something like Gekiganger. Kusakabe says that Gekiganger ends with the defeat of the evil empire and likens Earth to that fictional enemy, and then Genichiro shoots Siratori from the shadows, killing him. The others are able to get out of the situation because Goat throws hands again. Man, this guy has one move, but damn it, it always works. The Nadesco fights the Jovian fleet until their Estevalis are almost out of ammo and all seems lost. That is, until a gravity blast rocks the Jovians, and they are saved by the arrival of the new Nurgle ship, the Kakibutsuda. The Kakisubata, I got that right. Akito blames himself for not seeing the possibility of the betrayal and the trap, saying that he liked the good things about Gekiganger so much that he couldn't really see the terrible ending that it had. The entire crew of the Nadesco is now really confused because they've changed allegiances like 3 times in 2 episodes. And they're now aligned with Akatsuki once again as they head to Mars to try and take the ancient Martian city from the Jovians. And as an insult to Siratori, the Jovians make him a martyr, saying he was betrayed by the Earthlings and use his name to kick the war back into high gear. They finally get a single stroke of good luck when Inez actually figures out how organic boson jumping works, scattering a ton of CC crystals everywhere and having Akito and Yurika think of Mars' Utopia colony. While it freaks everyone on board out, the Nadesco successfully jumps all the way to Mars, where they find the unearthed Martian city. Inez explains that anytime a boson jump happens, there is increased activity in the structure of the ruins, which happens to be made out of the same material as CC crystal. Essentially, boson jumping is time travel, as we've suspected for a while, and the Martian city is actually a giant computer that processes the time lag and compensates, and the missing piece of boson jumping is the fact that you need a Martian-born person that has had their DNA altered by the nanomachines that are present in Mars's atmosphere because of the ancient aliens to complete the jump. Akito makes it to the bottom of the ruins in order to meet someone at Inez's behest. We see that it is the girl with the orange that presumably died in episode 1. Unfortunately, Akito does not make it in time and she disappears as the machine kicks on. Akito is distraught, having thought that the girl, named Ai, was dead the whole time and now having lost her again. But Inez explains that Ai didn't actually die. She boson jumped far into the ancient past of Mars and skipped around through time until she was found by Nurgle as an adult. And of course, the young Ai would become Inez, the Nurgle scientist that has been assisting Akito all along. Though she didn't actually recover all those memories until that episode with the weird metaphysical poker table. I guess it's more of a mahjong table. This revelation sort of blew my mind, but you could probably guess there was something going on with her with all the ominous shots throughout the series. Oh, also, Inez's younger self gives her this metal plate from the ancient aliens, which I immediately thought was really cool and interesting, and then we just never find out about it. Yeah, that is kind of one big downside of Martian Successor Nadesco. The ending is very abrupt. I mean, at this point, we're halfway through the final episode, so how are they going to solve the war? The answer is that they just don't. The Nadesco defends the Martian city from both the Earth forces and Jovian fleet, but after Akito and Yurika finally admit their feelings to each other and are able to manually boson jump away from the danger, that's sorta it. I get that the point they're going for is that war is a lot messier than depicted in media a lot of the time, and the Nadesco was never going to single-handedly solve the Jovians' issues, which were just far too complicated. Akito does at least come to the conclusion that even though following the themes and ideals of Gekiganger didn't lead him to a clean outcome in the war, he does want to believe in the version of himself that had faith in that hot-blooded passion. The show itself even calls out the fact that the war with the Jovians, the mystery of the ancient aliens, and Inez's mystery plate are never solved. Back in the day watching this, I probably wouldn't mind that much, but now we know that the show had a cancelled second season, so it does sting a little bit. At least there's a movie to tie up some of those loose ends. But the loose ends don't negate what Martian Successor Nadesco does throughout its runtime, which is tell an engaging and heartfelt story that is rife with sympathetic characters, well-drawn action, and more layers than most satire ever achieve. Hello everybody and welcome to today's end card. As always, thank you very, very much to my channel members. I'm going to go ahead and thank you all by name, aka Batosai Azure Windress, Brian Sanchez, Chris Goodnow, Daniel Johnson, Gert, Harmonious Hidden Insanity, Jessica Solberg, Jay Lamb, Joe Castellanos, Joe Cavazos, Johnny G, Canto 20, McLean Nugent, Sindustries, The Crawl, Trey Hardy, Video Gamer 75, and Zappa Slave. Thank you guys so much for being channel members. This month, You guys got 2 videos. It's been so long since I've done 2 long retrospective videos in 1 month. I'm quite proud of myself, and they were both quite long in runtime. I wanted this to be closer to half an hour, and I guess it's somewhere in the 45-minute ballpark, and that's closer than an hour, so that's good. Obviously, there's also the GQX vlogs going up every Tuesday or Wednesday this month, so I'm pretty proud of my output for April. I feel pretty good about it, actually. I think the total, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 videos in a month. That's pretty good, even though 4 of them will be kind of just like unscripted vlogs. Anyway, obviously over on the gaming channel, we are continuing Mass Effect and Chrono Trigger. It's been a little bit since that has popped up, but I just got a little bit burnt out. I went a long time uploading every single day over there, and I just burned myself out a little bit, and that channel is just for fun. It's just a little side project I do because I like doing it, and if it's burning me out, I'm going to take a break. That's just how it is. But Oblivion came out, so I've been uploading Oblivion over there, and I'm going to resume the Mass Effect and Chrono Trigger stuff as well. Just as I just wanted to finish this video before I really got back into working on that gaming channel stuff. As far as this channel, so go over there if you like Let's Plays and you want to see me go through the new Oblivion remaster, because I really love that game. As far as this channel, coming up next, actually, the next video in the Gundam retrospective, I'm going to head back and do the Gundam Seed Stargazer movie, because I skipped it because I was burned out on Gundam Seed at the time. So I'm going to go back and do that. That's going to be a little quick entry. And then after that, it looks like I'm finally going to do Brain Powered. I picked that myself just because it looked interesting, and like it always comes in second on the polls or third. So I'm going to do that finally. And then after that, it looks like we're going to have a community pick. And right now it looks like Aura Battler Dunbine. So that will be fun. I don't know anything about Dunbine. I haven't started watching it yet, but also Gundam The Origin will be in there as well after Stargazer. So there is your content forecast, and you can continue to look forward to the GQX vlogs every week. Those seem pretty popular for a vlog type video on the channel. The first one got like 10K views, so that's cool. Yeah, I'm having a really good time with it, so I hope you guys are enjoying. This has been a really long end card, which I don't normally do, so thank you guys very much. I will see you all again very soon. Have a good night.